The Department of Climate Change and Meteorological Services prioritizes research to deliver accurate weather forecasts and climate predictions for Malawi. This focus on data collection, analysis, and modeling ensures reliable information for Malawians. The department emphasizes the importance of weather and climate research through initiatives like early warning systems, collaboration with policymakers, adaptation strategies, effective communication, and a user-centric approach. In today's discussion, the Climate Voice, Deputy Director, Weather, Climate Change and Research Services at the Department of Climate Change and Meteorological Services in Malawi, explores the critical role of weather and climate research services. Mr. Boyce, welcome to today's discussion.
My name is Clement Boyce. I'm the Deputy Director responsible for climate change and the research services that the department carries out. What we do in this division, we have some sections under the division. The first one is what we call climate section. This is the one that is responsible for climate research as well as data management and liaising with other sectors of the economy in Malawi. For us, we deal with a number of sectors. So for us to reach out to those sectors, we go through the climate services section. Included in this section is agromet section, where we liaise with the Ministry of Agriculture in terms of monitoring the growing season, as well as modeling crop growth, so that by the end of the day we come up with estimates for production for a particular season, and then we compare with what the Ministry of Agriculture does using their own methodology. So that's one. We also have the aviation section in this division, whereby we know aviation. We look after the services that we provide for aviation industry in the country. The third one is on climate change, so we are responsible for doing climate science research.
Our first question is in the context of last mile users and early warning systems. How can weather and climate information be made more accessible and actionable for rural Malawian communities, particularly smallholder farmers, to improve their decision-making on agricultural practices in the face of extreme weather events?
Thanks so much for the question. The first thing that has to happen to make accessible climate information to rural communities is to increase our presence as a department in the communities, because as we speak now, in Malawi we only have about 21 stations that are manned by our people. So for the 21 stations against the 28 districts, that's not enough. We needed to have at least one officer that can champion the dissemination of information in the districts to communities. The second issue that we need to consider to get the information to the communities, accepting the fact that we are not everywhere, is to partner with the government and non-governmental actors that have programs in the communities, so that we can share with our information with those actors, and then they'll be able to incorporate them in their program. Other issue that we need to consider is to have electronic means of getting the information to the communities. Regarding research in this particular question, we have to find ways of increasing ownership of the programs, because sometimes we just do a program and then when it's finished, the communities don't continue to use what they have learned during the process. So ownership of the programs as well as infrastructure, because sometimes they destroy the infrastructure that helps to get the information to them. And then there is also need to research on how best can we use platforms such as traditional or religious platforms to get the information to the farmers so that it can be applied all over.
Our second question is based on policymakers and climate change adaptation. Malawi is already experiencing the effects of climate change, such as erratic rainfall patterns and more frequent droughts and floods. How can the division's climate change studies be more effectively utilized by policymakers to develop national adaptation strategies that protect Malawians, particularly those in vulnerable areas?
First thing that I would suggest is that we need to enhance awareness of the policymakers, because there are services, there are products, there is information that is available and its importance, but most of the policymakers are not aware, or they are just partially aware. So if we can increase or enhance the awareness to the policymakers, that would help in their policy making processes to include, because they understand the importance of the information, the products, they will be able to include those pieces of information as they make their decisions. The other issue that we need is on the availability of information. We need to increase co-production. We need to produce, to work with the users. Us as producers as well as users, we need to sit together and come up with the products that are most needed by the community to address the challenges that are available at community level.
Many NGOs and government agencies are implementing projects to build climate resilience in Malawi. What key climate data and information gaps should these project implementers be aware of to ensure their projects address the most pressing climate risks faced by Malawian communities?
First thing that I would advocate for is the issue of co-designing the programs, because sometimes the programs that our partners or our colleagues are implementing are designed, and then the department is invited at a later stage when the designing has already been done. So the first thing is that we should co-design, because during that process there is when we can make available the gaps that need to be addressed during the implementation of the program. So here we are talking about issues like observation equipment. In some places there used to be stations, but the equipment got broken down and then it was never replaced. So if you can co-design, then we would be able to request that observation equipment should be included in the project so that data is available at specific areas. Because what most, during our experience in the past, people would want to have for area-specific climate information that they can use to make decisions, and that can only be made available if they have area-specific or they have observation equipment in their areas. The other issue is the lack of historical data. There might be some particular areas where ever since there has never been observation data, but people are requesting that they should have information for their particular area, historical as well as to project the future.
Our second to last question focuses on communication channels. There can be a gap between the weather information the division generates and the information that reaches the last mile users. How can research be used to bridge this gap?
We need to use the most available communication channels. Here I'm thinking about having use of community radios and then establishing radio listening clubs in the communities so that they listen to the information and then they discuss and then make use of it. The other issue on the same is to employ the issue of sharing information through SMSs. That is, most of the community members have access to phones that can have SMSs. So if information is disseminated through SMSs, at least we can reach a good number of them. The other issue that we are considering is to have programs like PICSA. PICSA is a participatory integrated climate services for agriculture. This program makes information available to the farmers through extension workers. So we deal with extension workers, and then the extension workers train farmers how to use that information. And then during the season, they continue to interact. We continue to interact to provide information, and then the information gets to the communities through this program. So if this program can be enhanced, upscaled to the whole country, I think information can be made available to the communities. I never mentioned about social media, but this is a powerful tool now that information can be made available. So we have platforms in the department that have been developed and can be developed further to provide information to the users. So that can help to bridge the gap between us and the users that we are targeting. So that is one of the areas that we need to enhance. The other issue is to explore on how can we use the already existing structures. Here we are talking about civil protection committees that are already existing, but they are targeted for disaster management. How can we use such committees to be able to provide the information or to fill the gaps, information gaps? The other issue that comes to mind is we know that our communities, they have their own indigenous knowledge. So how can we bring together indigenous knowledge and science-based information to come up with the information that is blended to address the issues that are happening in the communities? So those are the few areas that we need to consider.
Now let us finally discuss the question of long-term investment in research. Investing in long-term climate research is crucial for understanding future climate risks. What are some of the key research priorities your division has identified, and how can stakeholders better support these efforts to ensure Malawi has the climate data it needs to make informed decisions in the face of a changing climate?
The first thing is we have historical data in the department. So the first thing is to enhance the quality of that data by first of all filling the gaps as well as quality controlling the existing data. That will help all research endeavors that may happen to be based on good data. The second thing is that we have data in Malawi, but there are gaps. So how can we use available data such as satellite data? So I'm proposing that we need to merge and test the operationality of the merged data against the observed data. So satellite data merged with the observed data, and then we can have data for all the areas that we are looking for. So that is one other issue. It's a big area that we need capacity development on, as well as equipment. So this should be taken into consideration. And I would also want to have an enhanced research program that is in modeling. We are doing climate modeling in the department, but I know we can do better so that we get information for the future that is going to be used to address issues in all the socio-economic sectors of the country.
Dear listeners, that was the voice of Clement Boyce, Deputy Director, Weather, Climate Change and Research Services at the Department of Climate Change and Meteorological Services in Malawi. Thank you for joining us. Join us again next time for more discussions on weather and climate in Malawi. My name is Carlos Lore. Goodbye until then.